welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your boy MagMongoSlade. Today, we got to talk about the Velveteen Dream. We talking about this guy again. This time, he put out a 4-minute apology video, apologizing to WWE, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Tahuti Miles, and his family for his behavior over the last couple of years. Now, I'm not going to play the audio of it. I'm just kind of going to give you the cliff notes, which I think I already did. So basically, he apologized to WWE for any negative attention that his behavior has gotten them. He apologized to Shawn Michaels for making him feel like he may have wasted his time, and he promised that he has not, and that he is still a work in progress, and he will continue to work, and he remembers all the lessons that he learned from him. He apologized to Triple H, who gave him the opportunity. He apologized to Tahuti Miles, who is Ashanti the Adonis, who is his best friend. He said that before Tahuti Miles was his friend and took up for him and looked out for him, he had an impeccable reputation, and he hopes that he has not damaged that reputation, and he apologized for any smudges to that man's reputation. He apologized to his family, saying that they should never have to apologize on his behalf or answer any questions about his behavior and different things of that sort. And it seemed very sincere. You know, I mean, here's the thing. Let's say you're one of these people who absolutely hate Velveteen Dream. Then there's nothing that he's going to say that's going to change your mind. So this is legitimately for the people that he's talking to. And he did it publicly because I'm pretty sure there's no way of contacting some of these people privately. And since a lot of the behaviors that he did and a lot of the stuff that he was saying ended up being public, it kind of makes sense that he would do it publicly. Now, in the video, of course, he did not mention any of the things that he was accused of, which were like being inappropriate with underage boys. He was also said to have been a headache backstage in terms of his bad behavior on a personal level. People in the locker room didn't like him very much. He was not very well liked in the locker room. Of course, recently, I think it was like last year or a year or two ago, he got into it with EC3, where EC3 claims that he was, the Velveteen Dream was looking at him in the bathroom or trying to record him in the bathroom or something crazy like that. So there's a lot of stuff out there about Velveteen Dream. And so if you're one of these people who absolutely hate him, then there's nothing he can say that's going to change your mind. But for pretty much everybody else, you're looking at this thing and you're saying, okay, is this an apology in an attempt to get back into WWE? Is it an apology to make yourself employable in wrestling again? Or is it legitimately a contrite apology and you're willing to take your lumps and move on? Now, in order for it to be a legitimate and contrite apology, for some people, they would have to say he has to apologize to his victims, which there have been no victims in terms of people who were proven to be victims. There weren't any. But he did have quite a few issues. You know, it would have been nice if he'd apologized to his coworkers, which he didn't. He apologized to the bosses in NXT, but he didn't apologize to maybe his coworkers, some of the people who, and look, I understand he wasn't very well liked in the locker room when, I think it was Nia Jax, Finn Balor, a couple of other people that were on the Twitter machine being quite shady when he was getting in trouble. I think it was it Finn Balor that had photoshopped a garbage can over his head or something like that, to call him trash. I think Nia Jax liked it, or she had said something crazy about him online. And there's a lot of people backstage in NXT who basically just did not like him for whatever reason. And of course, he also got into some legal troubles. I forgot about that. Or I think he got a DUI or something like that recently too. He had supposedly bit a police officer. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on. It's not up to me to forgive and forget what's going on with the Velveteen Dream. And it's not up to you either. Like, none of us have the authority to forgive this guy because he wasn't apologizing to us. Like the people who, now I get he says maybe he apologizing to Velveteen Dream fans, which I guess could be anybody. But when you're not in the position to accept the apology, you're really just kind of looking at it and saying to yourself, what's the point of this? Like, to some people, it's like, again, it's just an opportunity for him to try to get his job back. But he's been gone for so long now, I don't think this really could do him any good. Some people would say, look, it's too late. You've already been fired. Maybe you should have apologized before. But I think part of his problem is what he mentioned, is that he was being immature. And you got to remember, this guy was a prodigy. He was 23, 24 years old. And as a young man, that is when you're going to make a lot of your mistakes, is when you're a teenager and you're a younger guy. In the history of wrestling, he's not the only young man in that age bracket that's made a lot of issues. Randy Orton was very famous for making some trouble at 23, 24 years old in WWE. Austin Theory, another one, got himself into some trouble in the very early 20s of WWE. Mark Jindrak, was another one. There were, quite a few guys. X-Pac, Sean Waltman. So there's like a history of guys who've gotten themselves into the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. Early 20s, early to mid 20s. The fame is going to your head. Maybe the substances are going to your head. And you might have talent, but you don't have the maturity to harness it. And it seems like in the corporate environment, he was given a lot of opportunities, and then eventually they gave up. And sometimes they do give up on these guys. Sometimes they tough it out. A guy like a Randy Orton, he make it through on the other end and things are okay. Sometimes people flame out, like Mark Jindrak. But I understand that. And I want other people to understand that. Like, young guys have been fired from WWE for negative behaviors, despite talent. It's happened before. And Velveteen Dream is just one of many. The issue here is that most people seem to really be enthralled in the character and in the gimmick, and he screwed it up. And it's impossible for people to really believe in that character or root for that character with all these different things dangling over his head, specifically the stuff about underage boys and all this crap. Like, who the hell wants to cheer for a guy who might be reaching out to underage boys and sending them inappropriate pictures or whatever? And it doesn't matter whether it actually happened or not. Most people, just the accusation alone is going to be enough to destroy his career. I was labeled like the number one biggest Velveteen Dream defender on the internet. I don't see how that happened. Like, whenever I say, hey, what's the evidence? Let's go through the evidence. People are like, you're defending him. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm litigating the case. I just want to see what you got in terms of evidence and what's going on here. And it all seemed very suspicious to me. But I don't know whether he did that shit or not. Ultimately, I just want to know what the hell you got on the guy. So I don't think it's up to us to forgive him or not, unless you are a fan. If you are a fan, do you forgive him? I like the Velveteen Dream character. His behavior has been, just from what we know factually, in terms of him getting arrested and biting police officers, or he bit somebody in the gym or something crazy like that. Clearly he was on drugs, because when he was arguing with EC3, that came out that they were probably doing cocaine. That's what it sounded like. And, you got a young guy on drugs, making more money, living his dream. And the whole thing got cloudy and it got away from him. I completely understand it. What he went through is no different than what, football players and young basketball players go through. And that you give a guy too much too fast. And some people just can't handle it. And that seemed to be the case here. Do I think that WWE should give him a second chance? Look, I don't know. Look, he should be able to work somewhere, but I always had that attitude. Before the apology, I always said, look, the guy was never convicted of anything, so he certainly should be able to. I mean, it's not like Marty Scurll or Jack Gallagher or some of those other guys who legitimately admitted to having sex with underage people. He denied it, and there was no evidence to overturn that denial. So it's almost as if you're asking the question like, okay, he's being punished for being accused, and that's not fair. You should actually have to prove that something actually occurred. But then when you also understand that he had, poor reputation, well, now you have to say, well, that kind of explains why he never got another chance. But at the same time, because he was accused of being inappropriate with underage boys and stuff, is that why other promoters have never given him a chance? Remember, he did get booked once at a small indie show, and people called the promoter. I mean, people from far away on the other side of the country who was not going to this show, had no interest in the show, didn't know who the promoter was or anything, hunted that promoter down and basically bullied him into dropping Velveteen Dream from his show. And I always felt like for a guy who was never, ever convicted of a crime, that's unfair, and I maintain that that's the case. It's unfair, maybe he can go to Mexico and have a career. Maybe he can go to Puerto Rico and have a career. Maybe he can go to Europe and have a career. But I think he's done in the United States. He worked in WWE. Everything that he's ever done that was negative is on a rap sheet somewhere, in a file somewhere in Stanford or in the Performance Center. He's never going to get a job there again. It's highly unlikely that he'll ever get a job there again. And other places like AEW and Impact, they're not going to touch him. MLW might. Maybe MLW will look into it and see his talent and try to give him an opportunity. Because there needs to be places for guys who can rehab their careers. There has to be a place for a guy like a Low Key or a guy like an Austin Aries who is not very well liked by promoters or other people in the locker room, but they have talent and they can in some ways help your show, enhance your show. But at the same time, in the age of social media, these guys can be quite toxic, and the promoter himself can find himself ostracized for even booking him. So even if you were the kind of person who says, yeah, give Velveteen Dream a chance, there's going to be more people on the other side that's going to say any promoter who puts money in this guy's pocket is going to get destroyed. We're going to boycott your show. We're going to call and harass you. We're going to say you're supporting a pedo. And all of this is going to be, of course, on that gossip girl machine called Twitter or its sister's Instagram or Facebook or whatever. None of it has any legitimacy to it. So it's not really up to us. It's all about whether this guy can find a way to earn a living doing what he's good at. And he is a good wrestler. He's a good performer. But I think in the United States, he's done. And there's not too much you could do about that. A lot of the companies are a little bit more progressive than WWE. So Impact, well, not likely. AEW, certainly no. So his best bet is to go to Mexico. where they don't care about this kind of shit. I mean, Alberto Del Rio was accused of kidnapping a small child and threatening to kill him, and he still gets booked in Mexico. Now, part of that is because, he's a big star in Mexico. But, a bunch of guys get into some trouble in the U.S. and they just go to Mexico and start making money, because Mexico don't give a shit. So if Velveteen Dream hears this, that's for my suggestion. My suggestion is pack your bags and move to Tijuana. And maybe call Conan, call Rey Mysterio or Dominic Mysterio if you got their phone number, and get in touch with Conan and go to work in Mexico, or maybe go to work in CMLL or something. Go to work in Japan. You don't have to work in the United States. You have the talent to actually make this thing work, but I think that you're pretty much on the blacklist. This thing ain't gonna work. Guilty or not, you can forget it. Because he has a negative reputation and all this horrible shit that's been attached to his name. That being said, though, it always takes some gumption to apologize, So I want to give the guy credit for apologizing at the very least, and seemingly being legitimate in his apology, asking for nothing, but going out there apologizing nonetheless, knowing that he's going to be ridiculed, and he was. There's a lot of people ridiculing him, laughing at him, saying that they don't accept his apology. It's too late. Yada yada yada. Apologize to your victims. And to me, I'm just saying, look, it's an odd time, but it's been 3 years or whatever. Maybe he's cleared his mind up. Maybe he's gotten off of whatever drugs he was on. If he has some kind of mental issue, maybe he's got it under control. If he went to jail, maybe he's out now and he's got his thing together. We don't know what happened in all this time that he might have turned it around and come to a realization that he was being an asshole. And if he came to that realization and him willing to admit to that, I say good on you. Whenever you have people in like a 12-step program, one of the first things they do is they tell you to apologize. You got to call people and apologize to them if you wrong them. And it's not up to you about whether they accept your apology or not. You have to do it because you have to accept responsibility and be accountable. And that's part of everybody's recovery. We teach that too when we deal with people who have mental illness. You have to have what's called insight, which means you have to understand that your behavior is troublesome, that something is going on. You have to admit that you have a problem. You have to accept that you have a problem. And that's step one. And I'm looking at this thing like, okay, it's step one. Step one is he has to admit that he was being an asshole and that he made people look bad. He made the company look bad, and he made his family look bad. And he went out there and he apologized to all of those people. So I say, look, he's at least got one step on, and that's better than zero. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.